titled The Haunted Lift in the Hotel. It was a bitter moonless night when Chris Morgan checked into the Grand Cascade Hotel. A weary traveler, he had been on the road for hours, and the luxurious surroundings of the hotel seemed like a sanctuary. As he entered the grand lobby, its opulent chandeliers casting an eerie glow over the plush red carpets, he couldn't help but shiver. Little did he know that the grandeur masked a sinister secret. The hotel was a relic of a bygone era, its history stretching back a century. Its crowning glory was a vintage elevator, a quaint cage of brass and stained glass. Chris noticed it as he headed towards the reception. The lift was in immaculate condition, a stark contrast to the rest of the hotel, which had fallen into a state of disrepair. "Welcome to the Grand Cascade, Mr. Morgan," the receptionist said with a forced smile. "We have reserved the most exquisite room for you on the 5th floor." Chris thanked the receptionist and made his way to the lift. The moment he stepped inside, a chill crept up his spine. The lift was a time capsule, its dials and buttons radiating a dim, ghostly glow. He pressed the button for the 5th floor and watched the doors slowly creak shut. The lift jolted into motion with a screech, and Chris felt a wave of unease wash over him. As the lift ascended, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. It wasn't the eerie silence or the faint rustling sound that echoed from within the walls. It was the temperature. It dropped dramatically with each passing floor, plunging the small cage into a freezing cold. Chris clutched his jacket tighter, the frosty air biting through his clothes. The lift came to a halt on the 3rd floor. The doors creaked open, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor. A shadowy figure stood at the end of it, its silhouette dancing eerily on the faded wallpaper. Chris's heart raced as he stepped out, hoping to escape the unsettling atmosphere. The corridor seemed endless, with no end in sight. The lighting was poor, and the walls bore ominous stains resembling ghostly apparitions. The sound of dripping water echoed in his ears, and each step felt like an eternity. Finally, Chris reached the end and found himself back in the lobby. The lift was there, waiting for him, its doors still wide open. Confused and chilled to the bone, Chris re-entered the lift and pressed the button for the 5th floor once more. This time it ascended without a hitch, and he was relieved to reach his room. The air was warm, and the room was lavishly furnished. Exhausted from his journey, Chris dismissed the eerie incident as mere imagination and settled in for the night. The following morning, Chris awoke to the curious sight of the antique lift standing just outside his door. He couldn't help but wonder how it had arrived on the 5th floor, but it was nothing more than a puzzle to solve, and he decided to seek answers from the hotel staff. As he strolled down to the lobby, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The lobby was still, the grand chandeliers casting a macabre light, but there was no sign of the receptionist or any other guests. As he approached the front desk, a distant whispering echoed in his ears, unintelligible voices that seemed to come from the walls themselves. It sent a shiver down his spine. With no one to assist him, Chris decided to explore the hotel himself, determined to unravel its mysteries. He ventured into the long corridor leading to the antique lift. The same eerie scene played out as the previous night. The lift took him back to the lobby, where he was greeted by silence and empty spaces. The day stretched into night, and Chris's unease only deepened. He retreated to his room, locking himself in and hoping to escape the inexplicable happenings. But as the hours passed, he heard the whispering voices growing louder, more insistent. He couldn't understand the words, but they seemed to beckon him. With trepidation, he approached the antique lift once more. This time, he decided to descend to the basement. As the lift sank into the bowels of the hotel, the temperature plummeted, and a sense of dread enveloped him. The lift shuddered to a stop, and the doors opened into a dimly lit corridor. What Chris found in the basement was beyond his worst nightmares. The walls were adorned with old photographs of people he didn't recognize, their eyes fixed on him with an eerie intensity. In the flickering light, he saw a shadowy figure darting around the corners just out of his reach. The whispering voices grew louder, a cacophony of despair and anguish. Desperation overcame him, and he raced back to the antique lift, praying it would return him to the lobby. The lift ascended, but this time it was not the familiar lobby that awaited him. Instead, the doors opened into a nightmarish realm. The walls of the hotel had melted away, revealing a dark void filled with wailing spirits. Tormented faces pressed against the glass, clawing at him with spectral hands. Panicked, Chris mashed the button for the lobby, and the lift ascended once more, returning him to the darkened corridor on the 5th floor. The antique lift seemed to mock him, an instrument of malevolent forces beyond his comprehension. With every passing moment he realized that he was trapped in a nightmarish cycle, unable to escape the haunted lift and the malevolent spirits that tormented him. Days turned into weeks, and Chris's mind began to unravel. The whispering voices in the hotel walls had become a constant presence, driving him to the brink of madness. He had no concept of time or reality. The lines between the living and the dead had blurred beyond recognition. One fateful night, as Chris stood in the dimly lit corridor, he heard a voice among the whispers, one that was strangely familiar. It was his own voice, repeating a single word, "Help." He followed the sound, which led him to a hidden door concealed behind a tapestry. With trembling hands he pushed it open. Beyond the door was a room filled with books, scrolls, and old records. The room was a sanctuary of knowledge, and it held the answer to the hotel's curse. Chris learned of the hotel's tragic history, of a wicked owner who had made a pact with dark forces to ensure the success of the Grand Cascade. In return, the hotel had become a conduit for the souls of the dead, trapping them in an eternal loop of despair. Determined to break the curse, Chris delved into the ancient texts and discovered a ritual that could set the trapped souls free. With nothing to lose, he embarked on the arduous task of preparing for the ritual. The antique lift, the whispering voices, and the tormented spirits continued to haunt him, but he pressed on. The night of the ritual arrived, and Chris descended to the basement once more. He followed the intricate steps, chanting incantations that resonated with the lost souls. As he did, a blinding light filled the basement, and the spirits that had tormented him for so long began to dissipate. The lift trembled, and the walls of the hotel slowly returned to their original form. Exhausted and battered, Chris made his way back to his room. The antique lift was gone, replaced by a modern elevator that functioned without a hitch. The hotel had transformed, its oppressive atmosphere lifted. The lobby was bustling with guests, and the chandeliers radiated a warm, welcoming light. The curse of the Grand Cascade had been broken, and the spirits of the hotel were finally at peace. Chris Morgan, the unwitting hero, had survived the ordeal and brought an end to the haunting of the antique lift. As he checked out of the Grand Cascade, he couldn't help but glance at the now ordinary elevator, knowing the chilling secret that lay hidden within the depths of the hotel. And as he walked away, he could still hear the faintest of whispers, thanking him for setting them free.